Hello, all. I know folks are coming in. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're coming in from. I'm Ellen Haas. I'm the Associate Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs with AACC. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our second webinar in preparation for the Community College Innovation Challenge Boot Camp, where we'll be talking about customer discovery. I am just letting a few more people into our session room, so we'll get started momentarily. This session is being recorded, and we will be posting the recording and the slides to the Finalist Hub following you, though it'll be up on Monday. And if you're just coming in, please be sure to mute. For questions, please feel free to put them into chat, and then we'll have a question break similar to what we did with the orientation webinar, where we'll turn off the slides and we can come on camera and engage in dialogue. And we're very excited for your questions and for your participation today. So without further ado, I'm actually going to turn this over to Grant Warner. Grant has been a longtime consultant, facilitator, instructor for the Community College Innovation Challenge, and as well as a coach. You can't find a more enthusiastic and better suited individual to lead you through customer discovery. And with that, I'll let Grant continue the introduction of all the experience he has that he will be sharing with you today. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Ellen, and welcome everyone. Great to be introduced to you. Really look forward to working with you throughout the Community College Innovation Challenge. Let's see if I can get my clicker working here. All right, there we go. All right, so my name is Grant Warner. I currently run the Center for Black Entrepreneurship, which is a partnership between Spelman College, Morehouse College, and the Black Economic Alliance. Prior to that, I worked at Howard University as the Director of Innovation for the College of Engineering and the Office of Research. And I've been involved in supporting early stage companies, much like you, for most of the last 12 to 15 years. So some of the pictures you see are in similar programs to this that I've participated in around the world, Egypt, Senegal, Korea, etc. And much like you, I have also gone through the process myself as a startup founder of a technology company. And I've also been on the other side starting up a couple of funds. So really look forward to sharing my experience. Just want to jump into it. So just to reinforce what Ellen said, we want you to be active in the chat. So there are going to be a number of prompts throughout the presentation where we're going to ask for your feedback. So I'm honestly asking for you to put things in the chat at that point. And then, as Ellen mentioned, towards the end, we'll come off of the presentation and off mute, and we'll have a live discussion. Sound good? So again, we're not quite there yet, but let's do a welcome to DC. Not too long to when you will be there. And while you're there, one of the focal points will be for you to pitch. So there are different ways that people view a pitch. So sometimes they just want to share what the amazing thing is that they're working on. We have a very particular focus for our pitch, right? To show how your product solves a problem for a customer, right? That's the there inside of that slide. And one of the things that you'll be introduced to through Joe is the message triangle, right? How you might begin to identify who your customer is, the target, how you help them, right? Address a particular pain or gain. What are the benefits you offer? What's the thing that you're giving them? And what we hope is that the discovery process helps you to strengthen and inform your pitch, right? Where we move from things that we are just saying and we believe to things that we have evidence and can back. All right. So that's a really important part of why we are doing this. So before I jump into the rest of the presentation, first poll. So again, ideas for you to respond in chat. What do we think is the most common cause of failure for startups? Is that they spend money too fast, build a product nobody cares about, or don't have the right team. All right, Christopher started us off with a 2, building a product nobody cares about. All right. All right, seeing 2 and 3. 2 seems to be leading, but there are a bunch of 3s popping in. All right, 3 is coming in strong now. All of them, yeah. That's I like it. I like it. All right, so I would say, I mean, certainly all of them are problems. So that part is true. What's the most common cause of failure? So you might be surprised to find out it's building something that nobody cares about. And that's why it's so important to really be focused on the customer, to really be focused on what's needed, in terms of what you deploy, and not just on your thing, right? How fascinated you are with your own invention. So it begs the question, right? If the number one point of failure is building things that people don't care about, do companies actually do this? So each year I kind of focus on my favorite company to demonstrate that yes, this actually happens. The Segway. So now as it moves further and further away from when the Segway was launched, fewer and fewer people are as familiar with it. But the Segway was supposed to be a unicorn for its time. Now it's used primarily for city tours. I was talking to some students, and they were like, "Mall cop, like that's what you use it for, right?" But that wasn't what it was intended to be used for. So if you go back to the founding of the Segway, you had some tech luminaries who were really enamored with the Segway. So Steve Jobs said, "Well, this is going to be as significant as the personal computer." Jeff Bezos, this is going to be revolutionary, right? So it really begins to speak to the enthusiasm that existed around this. And so it wasn't only luminaries, investors also got super excited. So they raised $100 million in 2001. Again, using simple venture math, generally you say, okay, well, I'm looking for a 10x return. That says investors thought Segway was going to be $1 billion company, right? Which is the definition of a unicorn. Segway believed in it themselves. So they took all of this money, used it for execution. They thought everybody would want a Segway, went and hired people who knew how to do mass manufacturing, invested in building out a bunch of Segways because they thought everybody would want one. The projection was they were going to sell 6,000 Segways per week. So after 2 years, that would have been more than 500,000 Segways would have been sold, right? More than 500,000 Segways would have been sold. So here is the question: after 2 years, how many Segways were actually sold? All right, please put your guess in the chat. So it was supposed to be over 500,000 in 2 years. How many were actually sold? So Will says 10,000. That would have been despicable. Don says 5,000. Oh man, that would have been horrible because the projection was 500,000. Even 20K would have been terrible. 25K, horrible. Right. So again, the projection was more than 500,000 Segways at the end of 2 years. So 30,000, 100,000, even 100,000 would have been bad. But what was the actual number? So we got a couple 100K. So the actual number of Segways that were sold, drum roll, please, 6,000. 2 years, 6,000. So what they thought they would have sold in a week, they sold in total after 2 years. All right. So this is not a per week. You were, Don, you said 5,000. That was an amazing guess. That was an amazing guess. After 2 years, 6,000 Segways, right? That's what we refer to as Tyson's Law, right? So Tyson said, well, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So Segway went out and got punched in the mouth, right? So we thought this was going to be in everybody's home. Instead, we found less than 10,000 people who actually wanted a Segway. So it went from unicorn to the killer application being city tours. Again, wasn't supposed to be this way. But what happened is Segway really went into secret mode. So they were inside of the box, inside of their lab, talking to one another, building, saying how great this thing was. But then when you go out into the wild, quote unquote, you find that that was not true. So this is from paraphrasing their own local police department. So Segway thought, well, we could sell to police departments, we could sell to Disney. They even went and tried to sell to the U.S. Army. But what their own neighbor said, well, hey, they're fine for parking enforcement, but mountain bikes were cheaper, lighter, and never ran out of juice. So again, had you gone out and talked to someone and understood what their requirements were, you probably would not have thought a Segway would sell to police officers. And if you had talked to more people, you would have realized everyone has some criteria that Segway may not be able to meet. It was cool, but it wasn't functional, right? So, I love this quote because it really speaks to why we want you to do customer discovery. As I mentioned, Segway really hunkered down. A bunch of really smart people got together, believed that they were building something incredible. But what you needed was one dumb person in the room to keep things on the level, to ask the simplest questions. All right, that's me. All right, I'm going to be the dumb person in the room for your amazing innovations, continuously asking the simple questions, right? Who's the customer? What's the need? How do you know? Right? Those are the important, really important questions. And each time I present the Segway, people who have been on the Segway say, well, it's an amazing marvel of engineering. And I 100% agree. So the critique is not on the technology, amazing technology. The critique is on the product. So they chose to launch that amazing technology in the package of a Segway. You could have launched it in a different way. So in fact, the Bird scooters now run on Segway technology, right? So again, different implementation of the same technology. So the question is, well, why would you launch that particular product? Not why would you develop this particular technology? All right, so and the answer to that is that Segway did not understand the needs of the customer. Segway was a good invention. So you get on it, it's amazing. It wasn't a great innovation, right? And what we really want to focus on is the innovation piece here, right? Making sure we build something that people care about, not just that we build something that people think is cool, all right? So let's not be a Segway. So inventors understand technology. Innovators understand people. And we want to focus on understanding people. All right. So again, another quick poll. How would you identify? And I know I just said, hey, innovation. So you might feel like you have to say innovator here. You do not. Kind of what is your most comfortable classification? Is it inventor? Is it something else? Faculty member, student? Is it innovator? What do you think? All right, got innovators hopping in, innovators hopping in, innovators hopping in. Okay, I love it. All right, inventor hopping in. I like that too. All right, 2 and 3. So Holly, when we get to DC, we're going to figure out what the 3 is. All right, I've yet to find out. We're all on a perpetual hunt trying to figure out who we are. So, all right, lots of innovators in the room. All right, so again, we're at the Community College Innovation Challenge. So our goal is to make sure that everybody feels like they're an innovator. And there are a couple of fundamental skills that we can expose you to that will make you much more comfortable with that label. So that's what we're going to be working on. So one thing I want to do is really level set. Kind of Steve Blanks is the founder of the Lean Startup movement. And he has what he calls big ideas for innovation. And there are kind of 3 things that I think are really important. So one is that startups are not small companies. So companies are set up to execute on a known business model. Startups, on the other hand, don't know their business model yet. So you're searching, right? So again, you might think, just like Segway, I have something amazing that everybody wants, right? But you don't know that. So the whole point of a startup is to search for that truth. Because you're in search mode as a startup, you have to get out the building, right? You can't just lock yourself in your lab, build, and be amazed. you have to get out and you have to talk to people to really understand their motivations, their needs, etc. Right? That's the core of the customer discovery, right? Really just getting out of the building. And once you're out of the building, the goal is to do these rapid experiments, right? That's where this minimum viable product comes in, right? How can I learn the most while spending the least in terms of time, in terms of capital, et cetera? That's at the heart of what an MVP is. So again, if we think about innovation, these are kind of three core concepts, very simple, but eye-opening, right? Just eye-opening that, hey, yeah, you know what? Maybe I don't know the answer as to whether or not this would be successful. I should go out and figure out if the things I believe to be true are true. So because of that, I should run some experiments and test, right? That's what this distills to. So when we look at this customer discovery process at the very earliest stages, what we're going to focus on are three things, right? The people, the problem, and the proposition, right? So this will be the foundation of evidence-based innovation, right? Making sure that we collect evidence to support our approach as we make choices as entrepreneurs. So again, when we talk about the people, we're saying identify the customer. So you have a thought about who the customer is. Well, we want to go out and confirm that, right? Make sure that we do understand who might use, who might purchase, et cetera. Once we've identified those people, we really need to understand the need, right? What's the problem they have? What are solutions they use now? What are the shortcomings of those solutions? And are we viable because of that? And then we use that knowledge to design the proposition, right? What we offer them, what's the benefit, et cetera, right? So those are the process steps that we want to take. Because again, when we think about launching any innovation, it's built on a number of assumptions, a number of guesses. Who are we intending to help? That's where the identify the customer piece comes in. What is that person trying to achieve? Again, we might imagine they're going to be in awe of our invention, and they might be, but that awe likely won't translate into purchase. I got on a Segway. I was in awe of it, but we didn't purchase any. Again, what's the need that might drive drive that acquisition? What's the problem they have right now trying to accomplish their core need, their core job, right? That's where the pains and gains come in. And what are they using today, right? What's the status quo, the competition that you're going to have to be better than? Are you able to displace that? Right? All of that feeds into the value that might be accrued, right? If I have a solution today and I spend something for that solution, but because it's imperfect, I have to do other things. Those other things cost me money, cost me time, etc. All of that feeds into the value that accrues. So again, you're going to hear more about the message triangle, but the message triangle is trying to distill all of those things onto this one sheet, how your product helps your customer solve a problem, right? That's what it's trying to do. The discovery process is trying to make sure that we have evidence for all of the things that we want to put into that message triangle that ultimately we're going to pitch.
Sorted.
When you come in, please mute yourself. Yep. All right. So again, as I mentioned, your goal is to turn the things that you believe to be true, your guesses, into facts. And what we want to do is leverage the scientific method, something that you're already familiar with, to build, measure, and learn. And in this case, we're going to start off by building questions, going out, talking to people, assessing data, and using that to inform our next steps, right? That's the types of experiments we're going to be running here. But again, as you mature in your venture, there are other experiments that you might run that might not involve, just questions, right? It might involve prototype development, putting together wireframes, et cetera, getting feedback. But here we're focusing first on going out and talking to customers. So again, you're going to go out, you're going to talk to people and ask them questions. It literally is that simple, not rocket science. The things that you're developing are much more difficult than customer discovery. The surprising thing is that for decades, entrepreneurs skip this step, right? Skip this step. I was around during the dot-com boom. All people talked about was eyeballs. Like, hey, I got a great idea. Go out, try to raise some money. No conversation about what the unmet need is, right? How urgently does the customer kind of need this particular problem solved, and will that motivate any behavior? So again, often for decades, entrepreneurs skip this step. Now you gotta actually do this step. You got to get out the building. And when we say that, that doesn't actually mean literally. So it could be virtually. You might do a Zoom call just like this and talk to someone, but you got to talk to people who are your customers. All right. So all of you have a homework assignment that you should be familiar with. How many interviews are you supposed to complete before the boot camp? See a three, see a five. All right, see some fives coming in, see some fives coming in, see some threes and some fives. All right. It is five, right? So your goal is to complete 5 interviews before we get to the boot camp, and also log your interviews, right? So complete them, summarize them, come to the boot camp with those summaries so we can kind of talk through what you've learned. You'd be surprised how easy it is to forget interviews that were so crisp in your head just last week. So that's why it's really important to log your notes. All right, so because of your homework, we want to go through some fundamentals, best practices that we suggest for going and doing customer interviews. So one, we want to walk through kind of pre-planning the interview, conducting the interview, and then processing your interview results. All right. So the fundamental piece of the pre-planning work is figuring out who is your key customer, right? Who is it that you need to talk to very early on? So we'll talk through this in a little bit more detail in a follow-up workshop when we're on site. But when we think about customer types, there are a variety of different types. So you have end users, decision makers, buyers, influencers, recommenders. The two most important types very early on are end users and decision makers, right? They tend to be the ones most proximate to the problem, right? Can really give you rich information that helps to identify if there's a real need in the market around what you're proposing. Right. So first things we want to do is discern, well, who do we think the end user and or decision maker is? And then think about how we reach out to them. When it's unclear who those people might be, then you may start off by talking to a subject matter expert, right? So that's somebody who would not be your customer. So they're not going to purchase it, but they might be aware of how the industry you want to sell into works. Because of that, they can give you some hints about different guesses that you might go in and test. So they won't validate the things that you believe to be true, but they can help you refine the things that you're going to test, questions you might ask. They can also make introductions to people that you should talk to. So again, if you really don't know who the customer is, finding a subject matter expert could be helpful, consultant, etc. All right, but we really want you to talk to end users and decision makers with your 5 interviews. So how do we find them? So assuming we know who our end user or decision maker is, how do we find them? So our suggested best practice is to go to a watering hole, right? So watering hole is kind of where the animals gather on the savannah, different types in bunches, right? So we're looking for something like that. So it could be a conference where you think your customer is likely to attend, where you might find bunches of them. It could be a particular workplace. If I want to talk to faculty members, I might go to a university. If I want to talk to healthcare workers, I might go to a hospital and I'll find bunches of them. Somebody will talk to me. Another option is social media, right? So we're going to walk through social media because, again, if you have a sense of who it is and you're doing B2B, social media has some really strong tools that allow you to identify bunches of similar people that you can reach out to. So particularly, again, if you're doing business to business sales, then what you're primarily focused on is a particular job title, right? So I mentioned earlier that I was a startup founder. I had an ed tech company. We used to sell to instructional technologists. So that was our principal decision maker, end user when we started the company. So here's an example. I might go to LinkedIn, I'll put in instructional technologists. It'll pop up a list of people who I may or may not know. And then I can start identifying who is the optimal profile, right? And do some outreach. But they also have other tools that can help you refine your search, right? You say, okay, well, who is in this list? Who is somebody that I know somebody who knows them, right? So I have a shared connection. That shared connection, I know that maybe they can make an intro. And if they make that warm intro, they're more likely to talk to me, right? If Todd introduced me to Matthew, maybe Matthew is more likely to talk to me. But there are also filters that they have, right? We can use filters, again, to refine who I'm looking for. And in this case, maybe I need additional refinement around the market segment. So our company, we sold ed tech solutions into higher ed, not K-12. So I might choose higher ed as a filter. If I want to get someone to speak to me, it would be great to identify things that we have in common. One of the things that you might have in common is the school that you went to. So, right, I might filter for my alumni network, the schools that I went to, and then use that to refine the search, right? So I come up with someone who's the director of academic technology who went to a school that I went to, and I might reach out to them that way. So again, this is kind of an example, not the only example. So it's an example of how you might use a watering hole to identify some actual people that you can reach out to and talk to. But again, you might be able to do that through a conference. You might be able to do that by showing up at the workplace. You might have someone who's a strong connector at your college who can make introductions for you. All of those are completely viable. Generally, though, what is true is after you identify them, you still have to figure out how you get them to say yes to talking to you. So here is just one other example. It's inside the watering hole. There might be watering holes, which are groups. So here's an ed tech specialist group, has 4,500 members. So again, lots of opportunities for me to try to get some interviews, right? So all of them are not going to say yes. Maybe 5% will say yes, 1%, 2%, whatever it is. But with enough outreach, I will get someone to talk to me. So again, once you found them, though, the challenge is to get them to say yes. And that's where the cold call script comes in. So it's called cold call because it's what people use to make cold sales. Here, you're not trying to make sales, though. What we're trying to do is just initiate a conversation. But to do that, people have to know who you are. So even if I use social media, I still get prompted like, hey, if you really want them to respond, probably should let them know something about you. So generally for a cold call script, what you want to identify is who you are, what you're looking for, like what do you want to talk about, why are you contacting this specific person, and how much time do you need? So one example of a cold call script might be this, right? Hello, my name is Grant. I'm a student working on an NSF project exploring the use of social media in higher ed. I'm hoping to gain insight into decisions about how you make choices around tools or how you decide what social media to use. And because you're an expert in this area, I hope that you can speak to me for 10 minutes, right? So this is phrased intentionally. So one thing you see is that one, it's very brief. It tries to provide some background of who I am, but I highlight that I'm a student, or I highlight that I'm working on an NSF project, or I highlight that this is research. Because what you want to do is disarm sales immediately. When I get a cold call, the first thing I'm worried about is someone's trying to sell me something. So we want to make sure that they know this is not a sales call. And it's helpful for you too, because once you've set this context, it will be difficult to switch into sales mode. Like, hey, I thought you were a student. Why are you trying to sell me anything? And we do not want you trying to sell, just want you having a conversation. The other thing that's intentional here is the flattery. We're saying, as an expert in this area, I'm not sending this to everybody. I'm sending it to you because of your credentials, right? There's a small group of people in the US who can help me answer this question, you're among them, right? The other thing that's intentional here is the short amount of time. Not asking for 30 minutes, not asking for an hour, asking for 10 minutes. Almost nobody blocks their calendar for 10 minutes. But what 10 minutes does do is it allows them to get off the phone with you if it's not going well, right? I don't have to sit there for an hour. It's like, oh, hey, we're at time. I got to go. So it lowers the bar to them saying yes. But if the conversation is going well, and we've seen this hundreds of times as we've done discovery, people will talk to you. That 10-minute call can stretch to an hour if something valuable is being shared. So again, when we think about the introductory script, what you want is that who, what, why, and how, right? So those are the fundamental pieces. Who are you? What do you want? Why are you reaching out to them? How much time do you need? You want to be clear that you're not selling, right? So you want to disarm sales immediately. Try to flatter your target so they know this is not spam. Like, hey, I'm reaching out to you. You're special. Ask for small amounts of time to limit to lower the bar for them to say yes, right? So these are things that we suggest as best practice, right? Then once they agree to speak to you, now you got to figure out, well, what are the things that you need to know, right? What are the early stage things that you need to test or have as learning goals? So again, we have some best practices, some key early stage learning goals that we suggest each of you follow. So one is try to validate, do the customers have the problem you think they have? So you've identified this group as a customer because you think you understand what they're struggling with. Let's make sure that that part is true. Even if they're struggling with that thing, do you understand where this fits into their priorities? Years ago, I was working with a team and they went out on a customer discovery interview and they came back and they said, well, we found out the problem that we're solving falls literally number 25 on their list because they ran down a list of priority problems and ours came in at number 25. So that's likely not going to be your first customer, right? They got other things that they're wrestling with. You're trying to find someone where you've identified a problem and that problem is really high priority to them. And then the third piece is, are you even talking to the right people? So yeah, you might think this person has the problem and the authority. None of those things might be true, right? So you got to make sure you understand the job that they do generally, right? Do they even interact with the processes that you're trying to fix? People will share all types of information with you secondhand that they don't even experience firsthand. You want to make sure that you're talking to people who experience this firsthand, right? You're talking to the right people. Then, again, the goal is to create a conversation. I presented a list of questions. You don't want to go in and ask those questions in that order, right? Like, do you have this problem, right? Is this problem a high priority? Are you the right person to be talking to? Like, you don't want to do that. So what we want to do is create a conversation. And in that conversation, you'll learn things that will inform those questions. And you might learn some things that you didn't even think to ask as questions, right? And that's the benefit of having this conversation. So again, best practice, open-ended questions that prompt discussions so you can get stories. So when was the last time you? So again, that prompts someone very open-ended to begin to share. And what they're sharing is something that actually happened to them, not something that they have to theorize how they would act if something happened, right? That's the strongest piece of evidence. Like, how do you actually behave in a situation? Walk me through the process of, can you explain how, when would, etc. All open-ended prompts that will get them talking. That's what you want. The second thing you want to do is really understand the job, right? So what are the steps that they take to address a particular job? Where in the process are the problems, right? The things that they're developing workarounds for or forces them to move back in a step. How are you solving those problems today? Like really important things that begin to validate the problems, the importance of the problems, etc. Are they actively looking for new solutions, right? That tells you something about the urgency they have to address this, right? And if they're not, it says maybe this is not so urgent. The other thing that we talk about is why-lattering. So you hear something that you find extremely interesting. Don't just check the box and get excited. make sure you understand the motivation, like what's causing this type of behavior. Why? Right? Keep asking those things until you get to the root cause. And again, each why question might not actually be stated as why, right? There are implications that you can find that serve the purpose of a why question, but again, prompt a lot more open discussion. All right, so I hope you took notes, because now what we're going to do is a little quiz. All right, this quiz is called Good Question, Bad Question. And again, what we're going to do is invite you to share in chat responses to the questions that we have here, and whether or not you think this is a good question or a bad question, given the rules that we've just provided. All right, everybody ready? All right, so again, these are in no particular order. So just because this is first doesn't mean this is the first question I would ask somebody. We're just asking you to evaluate each question independently. So what is the biggest issue you face when dealing with process or activity Y, right? So whatever thing you're interested in is Y. Is this a good question or a bad question? What do we think? Right. All right, lots of good questions popping up in the chat. Yes, this is a good question, right? So this is an open-ended question. It helps you begin to understand the issues and struggles they have around things, right? So this is how you begin to identify pain, need, benefit. So a really good question. All right, would you buy a product that did X? Oh, all caps. Will said no. All right, bad question. Bad question. All right, bunch of bads flying in. All right, so this is a bad question. So one, this is a yes/no question, but it also prompts someone to project how they might behave. That's not reliable data, right? We want to get how they actually behave. And the third thing, we don't want to talk about your product at all, right? So you don't want to suggest anything about what your product does, because it will bias the rest of the interview, right? Once I know what somebody's doing, I'll be loath to tell them this is a bad idea, right? So, and you want honest feedback. All right, what are the implications of not solving the problem? So they may have just introduced that there's an issue that they struggle with. Now I'm asking, well, what's the implications of not solving it? All right, so you're all caps good. All right, good job. All right, all goods coming in. Yes, this is a good question. And again, as I mentioned before with the why laddering, like we might ask a question that might not be framed with a why, that is a why question, right? So what are the implications as a why question? Like, why is this important to you, right? If you tell me the implications, I will understand some of the root cause. So that's a really good question. How are you dealing with this today? Again, presumably somebody said, hey, there's an issue, and you want to know, well, how are you dealing with this issue today? All right, bunch of goods coming in. Again, another good question here. And the thing here is, again, what we want to know is, well, what are competitive solutions in the market? What are the implications of not solving the problem? Understanding how they deal with it today helps get you those answers, right? Really important things to know very early on. What solutions have you tried? Good question, bad question. All right, a great came in. All right. All right, this group is sharp. This group is sharp. All right, this is another good question. Again, much like the other one, it helps us begin to understand, well, what does the competitive landscape look like? Where are other solutions, people who might be competitors or who might be partners, right? So really important to understand the ecosystem that you're operating in. Just as important as it is to understand the customer workflow and how they use competitive solutions, right? Good question. What would your dream product do? Good question or bad question? All right, we got a bad. It's all popping in. Will's not sure. Oh, somebody said very bad. Wow. Okay. All right. So this was a bit of a trick question. It's interesting. I'm surprised nobody said good. So oftentimes we do these things and people say, you know what? My favorite question is to ask the magic wand question. If you had a magic wand, like, well, how would you solve this? And this is kind of one of those magic wand type questions. So it's a trick question in one sense. So it could be a good question if they start telling you things that they want fixed, like customer jobs that are a problem. Like that could be really helpful in understanding pain and issues that they have, etc. Generally, though, the danger in this kind of question, which could make it a bad question, is that people start giving you feature requests. So I just came out of a discovery report out session where some of that was happening. Like they started prompting some of their discovery interviewees for what would the dream product do, and all you get is a feature list. And they're like, okay, well maybe I'll add this feature to my product. Maybe I'll add this feature, and you have 10 features for 10 different customers. That's not what you want, right? What you want to do is understand what is the biggest problem, and then from that problem begin to develop the solution. So it really can be a dangerous question. So I can understand why everybody said bad. All right, would you pay X for a solution that did Y? Again, oh, bad question. I could barely get that out before the solutions, before the answers came in. All right, so that is a bad question. That is a bad question. All right, where does the money come from to deal with this issue? Good question, a bad question. And now we're getting some mixed. Now we're getting some mixed answers. Good, bad, 50-50. All right, good, bad. Okay. All right, so I would argue that this is a good question. So again, what we're trying to determine, are we talking to the right people, the people with the authority, the people who actually experience the problem? This is one way to get at that, right? So who else is involved in the decision making around the use of this product? So this is one way that you might begin to get at that. So it could be a good question. Certainly, if you're trying to build a for-profit business, at some point you're going to need to know the answer to this, right? So again, it is an important part of beginning to understand what that local acquisition chain looks like. Who's involved? Am I talking to the right people, et cetera? All right, what do you think about this solution? Good question, a bad question. This is for all the marbles. This is for all the marbles right here. This is almost 100 points right now. Right now. All right, so we got a good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, going back and forth. All right, this is the most important thing that you have to take away from this session. This is a bad, horrible question. We don't want you talking about your solution at all, okay? What we want you to do right now is just test the problem. These first 5 interviews, let's make sure we understand who the customer is, what issues they're struggling with, how urgent is that issue. Don't tell them about your solution, all right? Once you tell them about your solution, it'll bias the interview. So if for some reason they're pressing you to understand what it is you're working on, what we want you to do is tell them, I will tell you that at the end of the interview. Then you're free to share kind of what it is you're working on because you've already collected the information, right? Before that point, please do not talk about what you're working on. All right. So overall, good job. All right, we still got high 90s, but I'm going to scroll back through the chat and see who said good question, and I'm going to give you an F. No, I'm just kidding. But all right. So no, thank you all for playing along with this. So, you know, again, in summary, when you're conducting the interview, what we want you to do is really, again, get them to talk to you. Tell a story about their job or responsibility. So, you know, oftentimes you hear about this 80-20 rule. So we want you to use the 80-20 rule for interviews. That means 80% of the time they're talking, and you're talking only 20% of the time. And again, if you're doing an interview via Zoom and they allow you to bring in a note taker, the note taker will tell you how long you spoke. You know, that's one of the amazing things. The summary will tell you. And if you're edging up to 40, 50%, you're talking too much, right? You really just want to make sure that they're talking. So you want to ask open-ended questions. when you hear things that you think are important about pain points, start trying to get at the root cause, right? This is that why laddering piece. Let's make sure we understand why this is an issue, the way in which it impacts them, etc. As I said, 80-20, listen more, talk less. Do not talk about your product at all, right? Again, if you're forced to, do it at the end. During the interview, not at all. And make sure you take notes. Again, it's really easy to forget what people tell you. We generally say best practice, take 2 people into an interview, one takes notes, one talks. All right. So when you close the interview, we also have some suggested things just to do by reflex, right? So, hey, if you've given them your cold call introduction, they have some sense of what it is you want to talk about. They may have formulated in their minds things that they're going to share, but because you're having a conversation, they might not have gotten a chance to share that thing. So at the end, you might just step back and say, hey, is there anything else I should have asked you about, or anything else you wanted to share that maybe we didn't get to talk about? To simplify you getting to volumes of people, ask them who else should you talk to, right? So you got one interview, maybe that one interview could lead to 3 more, right? Who else might they introduce you to, particularly if the interview went well, right? They'll kind of want to share some of this information. Another important thing is to ask them, can I follow up with you later? So I've spoken to you now in 3 interviews. I might have a very different sense of what the problem is, and I might want to clarify some things. It makes it so much easier just to put that on the table now, right? It just takes the awkwardness out of reaching back out, and just make sure that you thank them. All right. So again, the goal of this is human to human contact. Like, let's just be humans in this whole process. All right, now at the end, what we want you to do is process the interview, and I'm going to challenge you here in a couple ways, right? So there's going to be a lot of things that you learn. What we want to do is make sure that you filter out the things that are not important. Really focus on the things that are important. So the first thing we want to combat is your own bias. So you'll go into this interview because you're a human. And you'll want to hear certain things. Like, it'll feel much better to hear that what you're working on is important to that person than what you're working on is not important to that person, right? That's just a normal part of being a human. So I would say challenge yourself the other way. So what did you hear that you never heard before? So not did they agree with you? Like, did they introduce something that you never even thought about before? Did they invalidate things that you believe to be true, right? Let's bring that to the surface immediately. Did they tell you about new people that you were unaware of, right? These whole sets of questions resets your mind, right? Before we even get into, well, did they validate things? Yes, I heard the stuff that I like. Let's start thinking about the other side, right? Really open up the aperture so that you receive information that you might not want to. And then think about what will you revise or change based on what you've heard, right? So oftentimes you'll go in, as I said, you have some thought about what you think is important. As you talk to people, inevitably you will learn things that you did not know. Kind of be open to that. Again, once you've done all of these prompts, now you can go back and say, okay, well, are there some hypotheses that we were able to validate? But this way we know we're not biasing ourselves. All right. And then just to reiterate some things here, customer discovery do's and don'ts. All right. So this whole pre-planning of the interview is so important. So you don't want to go in and just be off the cuff. Like, we want to be intentional about who we reach out to. We want to be intentional about the things we're trying to learn in the conversation. And we want to be intentional about making sure we don't introduce bias into the process, right? We want to hear from them. You don't want them just to parrot back what you think is important. So again, listen more, talk less, ask the open-ended questions, make sure you ask for referrals. And then when you get your responses, log them honestly. Like, things that stink, list the things that stink. Like, the things that are incredible, list the things that are incredible too, right? But let's just be very honest, intellectually honest about the discovery we do. Again, don't talk about your product, so no selling. Again, we've had cases where people go out, do discovery after the 100th interview. It's like, hey, I've identified somebody who's going to be a customer and they're going to give me a contract. That's fantastic. But certainly we don't want to do that after interview 5, right? We want to make sure that we understand what it is we're talking about. So please don't sell, don't pitch them, etc. You can pitch when you get up on the stage. Don't talk about your technology. Don't ask them what they want. Really talk about the problems that you think they have. Try to validate the workflows, etc. All right. Again, I started with this very early on. Nothing I said was complicated, all super easy. It's just steps people don't take, right? It's not rocket science, but it is a discipline, right? You got to discipline yourself to do these things. All right. So I'm going to end it on a couple of question prompts again. All right. I'm going to get you in the chat. Then we're going to come back together, allow you to unmute if there are any other questions. Startups' number one job, right? So I said startups are not small companies. What's a startup's number one job? What do we think? This is super, super germane to what we're going to ask you to do. Yeah, right, exactly. Get out of the building. That's right. Get out of the building. Okay, yes. All right. We got a couple of get outs in there. All right, good. I like it. All right, innovate. All right. I guess it's all related. Yes, it's all related. All right. Make a product that caters to real people. I love it. All right. So number one job, and I agree with everything that's in the chat, customer discovery. All right. Let's go out. Let's talk to people. Let's identify kind of real problems they have, right? So why must startups do customer discovery? What is the fundamental thing we're trying to avoid? I love all this stuff. Convert ideas into reality. It's amazing. Right. We want to make sure that we build something people care about, not things that they don't care about. Right. So again, that's what this whole process is about. When we do it well, you make an excellent pitch. All right. So I love it. Make sure product is solid. Get out of your own head. All of these things are amazing. I love it. So with that, that's all I got, and we can open the floor up to some Q&A. Don't have preconceived notions. All right, I'll stop the share.
Thank you, Grant. So yes, if you have questions about the interview process, how to get started, or how, I know one that typically people ask Grant is, do I need to bring these logs with me to the boot camp?
Yes. Yes, we're going to use your logs during some of the workshops. So we're going to ask you to refer back to them. So that's why we want you to write the things down. It's good best practice, but we're going to use them in practice when we get together in DC.
Yeah, so this is not the last you'll hear of customer discovery. This is the precursor to more content you'll have at the boot camp. So this is an exercise that we'll be building upon in person. So there's a question on NDAs for people we interview, or is that overkill?
Yeah, no, that is overkill. So again, the point here is not to share with them anything you're working on, right? So an NDA is like, hey, here's my cool technology. If I tell you, you might copy it. We don't want you to share any of your technology. So no NDAs. Is there a template for the log? Yes, we will share a template for the log.
Yeah, we will post the template with the recording and the slides from this presentation.
I had a quick question.
Please.
Going off of the, I guess, NDA's question, one of my concerns is, at least for the couple of people that we have planned for an interview, our concern might be that they're hyper fixated on our product and our solution. So with that said, could you mention some other ways besides saying we could talk about it at the end, where you can kind of curtail that into a more productive discussion as opposed to talking about the thing we're doing?
Well, again, I would, one is they already know you, so they already know what you're working on before you reached out. Okay. Yeah. So generally I was going to say my initial response was to say, well, that's why we do the cold call script. Like, we want to level set that, hey, what we want to talk about is not technology at all. It is actually this process. So, kind of whatever the thing is that they do, right, that you think they have a problem with. Like, that's really what we want to talk about. So that's generally the first thing that we say focus on. I would say the other approach. So if you don't want to say, well, I'll tell you at the end of the call, you could say, well, it's actually not mature. I don't have anything to talk about yet. Like it's like then that diffuses it completely. So and people have used that. But again, I would say the objective is to make sure that the conversation is not about technology, not about the product, all about the problem.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything
Any other-
else? We don't bite.
Yeah, no, feel free, come on camera, put in chat, whatever you're comfortable with.
I'm sorry that I was a couple minutes late to the workshop today, so you may have covered this. I was wondering, like, do you think it would be a good idea to interview people like on all ends of the spectrum of where the brain is going with our innovation? You know, so maybe it could be, you know, this population, like come up with a
Yeah,
not just one group of people kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I didn't touch on this explicitly because we're doing so few interviews to start with. But generally, like when we do this for the I-Corps program, where the goal is to do 100 interviews, what we tell people is that, yeah, you might identify multiple potential customer segments. And very early on, like your first 20 interviews, you might distribute those over a couple of different customer segments just to begin to understand like what's the signal you get back. So in this case, because you're only doing 5, I would say 2 max. So at least you have multiple data points in each segment. And then you could use that signal to say, okay, well, based on what we heard, here's the case that we're going to build around for CCIC. But there are others that we might also explore later on.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Else.
I'd be interested to find out like how many students here have never thought about doing an interview. I mean, maybe that just a crazy question? Like, have you ever thought about doing an interview, like to find out what the market is really like, to ask those opinions? Is this a new strategy for you?
Yeah, maybe some people. Okay, yeah, all right. I love it. So Jacob, maybe we'll put you on the spot. So you've done some interviews. So tell us a little bit about how that process has gone for you.
Absolutely. One thing that you mentioned that I think knowing now, I wish I knew, which was the 80-20 rule. Working with my team, we kind of identified that because I'm so excited and I'm so much looking for the approval of if the concept is like worth doing, that I talk too much. So we need to talk to the industry experts. The first interview we had, we talked with someone who was entirely the wrong guy, which was okay, but
Yeah.
it was a good start. And that helped us really figure out who we should be talking to, you know. Then we started meeting with more engineers, people who worked in energy industries, and then they started giving us more insightful information. And now we're really honing in on like who the industry experts are for us, so that way we can try to get the answers that we need.
Okay. And when you say, so one, I love this, the idea that, hey, we spoke to somebody, they weren't the right person. That's okay. Because this is the reality. I mean, it's one of those situations where in discovery, you have to kiss frogs. Like, you don't know, like one of them might be the prince or princess, right? But you got to kiss some frogs. You don't know. So I think that's the reality. The second piece is, well, as you've spoken to more people, have they been making introductions for you into the industry? Have you started to get any referrals?
Yeah, so we had sort of like an appreciation luncheon for recently for people who helped like fundraise this portion of going to nationals.
Okay.
During that luncheon, I was fortunate enough to meet with somebody who is working on like a large CAC thing. To put it, long story short, the previous president of the college knew an important figure, and he literally physically stood up and was like, I'm a person who likes to do things now, and then brought me over to connect with him. And then we got that email and we started that lead there, which was really valuable.
Okay. I mean, I love it. So the only thing that gives me a little bit of caution is that you mentioned engineers and tech. And are those people your customers, or are those people subject matter experts who can help you build whatever you're looking to do?
At least the person I had just mentioned, I believe, is what you would kind of say is a decision maker. They're starting up a facility that in our area, or actually they already have, but they're starting they made a facility in our area that would utilize our technology. So
Okay,
we
great.
think,
Love it.
so I think that would be a great person to ask, like, are you the right person to talk to? Because yes, they are the decision maker, but they probably have people under them that work for them that could really give us what we're looking for. And that's kind of what we're hoping.
Yeah, again, another great point that you brought out. Oftentimes, like, it feels good to say, "Well, I'm going to talk to the plant manager, the CEO, you know, whoever it is." That person is probably, to your point, 4 or 5 steps removed from the actual problem. Like, I'm kind of roughly aware of it, but the person who's going to dictate whether or not we adopt this is kind of on the front line. So you do want to talk to those types of people. All right, fantastic. Sounds like you and your team are off to a great start. I love it.
And Grant, I did just want to piggyback on what Dr. Woods asked in terms of students. That typically we will see a few teams have done some interviews. We'll see some teams who this is a completely new concept for it, have not delved into it at all, and some who have done it a little bit. So just to reassure everyone out there that wherever you are in this process is completely acceptable. Part of learning customer discovery is finding those watering holes, getting putting your toe in the proverbial water and getting started on this. And if you already are doing these, it's refining your technique to get the information you need. So as I said, this is a process that we will build upon when we meet in DC in person. And there'll be an opportunity for more discovery in real time. We typically
Yes.
bring people in to have you apply what you've learned on site.
Indeed. And maybe we'll go the other way. So PJ, you said you're new to this. Danielle said newish, which means maybe they've done some things. New, I take to me, maybe you have not. So PJ, are you willing to come off mute and kind of share your thoughts around this? Do you have any trepidation? Are you anxious to do it?
He appears to be talking with his team. So
Okay.
yeah.
They're like, can we turn off our camera? Will they not know we're here?
I had a question. First of all,
Please.
thank you so much for this slide. Everything you've said today has been so helpful, and I'm just so grateful to be here. My question is, when we go and do customer discovery and get all of this feedback for what their problem is and it helps refine what we're doing, can we make any changes, or is everything that we've kind of set in so far, is that locked in stone? Or can we kind of make slight adjustments to say, well, maybe this would benefit our customer better?
I will defer to Ellen. I have an
Oh.
answer, but I will defer to Ellen for the competition.
It is not set in stone. I mean, part of this process is learning as you go. That's one of the reasons we say don't come with your pitch fully formed, because certainly come with an outline, talking points, or to whatever level you're comfortable with, because you may making adjustments as you go through this customer discovery process and even further as you come on site to boot camp. But certainly, Grant, relay your words as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. I would say in general, I mean, the reason why we do discovery is so that it informs, kind of what the requirements document is, right? That would really guide your development. So you just kind of want to be open to the idea that you're going to pivot and change, and that's just a natural part of the process.
Thank you.
Please. Yep, thank you. Jacob, feel free to unmute.
Yeah. One thing, this, I guess, Courtney kind of made me think of it. But so far, I think the purpose of our interviews has been addressing feasibility. But I just want to recognize, at least to understand what you're saying, we should be doing these interviews and step away from the addressing feasibility standpoint and then start really identifying, like what you said, the pain points, the correct customer.
Yeah. So there are kind of three things, kind of when you look at the business model canvas that it's organized around. It's kind of desirability, feasibility, viability. So what we want you to do very early stage is this desirability part. Like, is there an actual need in the market? Certainly, it's really important that your thing be real. Like, we can't just throw pixie dust on problems and fix them. But yeah, first we got to make sure that the problem also is real.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? PJT. Okay, there we go. Yes,
Oh,
Danielle,
sorry.
please.
I was wondering, so if we use like quantitative and qualitative different kind of data and statistics like that, is that also good for the interviewing process? I'm not saying that I would use it solely, but I'm saying like if we looked at, X, Y, and Z has already been established that this is a problem and that this is a thing, and it's a bigger research than we could do personally, which also we can work on personally, but that it's clear that this is a problem.
I think there are two different things in my experience. So one is the secondary research that might bring you to a general area, right? That says, hey, I understand people struggle with, but your particular innovation has an approach and is built on assumptions about how people behave or the very particular issues they have within that larger problem. Generally, research has not addressed that, right? Because they don't know your particular approach. So I think secondary research is helpful, but primary research at the early stage is the most helpful, right? Because it will validate some of the things that you hear in the secondary research, and it'll open up awareness for things that the secondary research hasn't captured.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Great question.
All right, Grant.
All good. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I won't hold you.
Yeah.
I won't hold you. I won't hold them, Ellen. I won't hold them.
Well, no, I get to remind them. Thanks to you, all of you that have sent in your registration forms, or and let us know of your hotel needs. If you have not done that, please do so today. If you've not yet made your travel, please reach out to our travel agent today. It's very helpful. To get all these logistics made. Reach out to Courtney if you have any questions. That's what we are here for. And then in terms of customer discovery, as with any anything we offer, if we get off this session and or you start the process and have questions, please reach out. We're happy to address, at any point to help you through this process between now and June.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, any last questions or comments, or we're happy to entertain them. This is your time. But again, just to reassure that anywhere you are in this process is absolutely just fine and where you need to be. Just to open to learning on this journey that we'll all be on together when we convene in DC.
All right. And again, no questions now doesn't mean no questions ever. We can answer them whenever they come up. So,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
again, great meeting. Each of you, look forward to meeting you in person.
Yes, very much so. All right. Well, we will give you back a little time to your Friday afternoon. Have a wonderful weekend. Reach out with any questions, and we look forward to seeing you all in June. Thank you all. Thank you, Grant.
All right. Fantastic. Take care. All.
Take care.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much, everybody.
Thank you.